All right, what's going on, everybody? This is JT here with JT Invest in You. We have a wonderful show today. We have a special guest, Aaron Martinez, over at Headline Inc. The crew over there is just pumping out project after project, so I really can't wait to talk to them. For anybody that's tuning in right away, if you have any questions for us, just drop them in the chat, and we will get to those at the end of the video. And without further ado, all right, we have Aaron Martinez. How you doing?
Good. I'm doing really good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. I appreciate you coming on the show today.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's great to be here. I love watching all your episodes. The last one you did with Transaction Lab was super interesting. Y'all touched a bunch of really interesting subjects in that one.
Awesome, awesome. It's great to know that you're a fan. Well,
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
like I said, I appreciate having you on. There's so much that we could cover today. I literally have way too much written down. So why don't we just jump right into it? And how about you introduce yourself to the audience? I'm sure a lot of the audience already knows who you are, but why don't we start there? Introduce yourself and what Headline Inc. is and what your role is there.
Sure. So my name is Aaron Martinez. I'm the founder of Headline, and we are a software development company building solutions on the Algorand blockchain. And we're behind a lot of the really exciting innovation that's happening in the DeFi space right now. And moving forward, we're going to be scaling our operation in a really big way, and it's going to be really exciting to see all the different pieces start coming together.
Yeah, awesome. It's honestly pretty interesting to watch. It seems like a lot of pieces are uh, are flowing pretty quickly. It's like every other day you have some other announcement. But that actually just leads me right into it. I did see a tweet of yours, or maybe it was just headlines itself the other day, that you were coming out with two different dApps this week, one for devs and one for DAOs. Could you talk a little bit more about those apps that are coming out?
Yeah, definitely. So I definitely said so this week and next. They're both getting reviewed by the Algorand Foundation right now because these are so like we have several different product lines. That's a good way to think about it. We build certain stuff that's specifically for the Algorand Foundation project that we collab with them on called Pipeline UI, and it's essentially like a set of developer tools. But we've started to build more retail applications for it as well. So both of these new dApps that are going to be coming out are going to be part of our current Algorand Foundation project. It's like broken down to milestones. And these are both like really innovative solutions that are going to be widely applicable. Without going into too much detail, because I don't want to like, give too much away about them. But so let's start with the DAO thing, for example. The one thing that really kick-started this for me was Kimball Musk had made a tweet a couple weeks ago asking about DAO infrastructure because the gas fees on Ethereum are like exorbitantly high. So people have suggested Algorand, and then he made a tweet and he was like, tell me about the DAO infrastructure on Algorand. And most of the responses were like, well, this is getting built, or this is in the works. And I was like, man, talk about a missed opportunity, right? Because that would have been an incredible opportunity if we had a DAO Launchpad, for example, where we could be like, oh, Kimball, we're ready. Come on over. We got it all figured out. But we don't, right? Because it's not there yet. Because it's so new. We're a young blockchain. So it just kind of got the gears spinning for me. And I was like, I want to start building some like applications or things that could fit into essentially like a DAO toolkit for people to basically be able to launch a DAO off of. So we started doing some bounties for that we had put out there. But I don't like to wait for other people to build stuff. So we started like experimenting with a few things. And we have a really, really like awesome solution for one of the key aspects of building a DAO that doesn't exist yet. And it's going to be free for everybody to use. And it'll be ready in about a week or so. And it's like one of the core elements that you need to build a DAO, right? So it's a key piece. And we've basically finished it almost.
Yeah, that's
Cool.
awesome because the idea of DAOs is terrific, but even on any blockchain, really, the infrastructure is still
Mm-hmm.
very, very new. I should say. I mean, it's hardly existent at all on Algorand, but even on the other blockchains, it's really not. It's still in the adolescence phase. So yeah, I mean, I saw those tweets from Kimball Musk as well. I even commented on them, and yeah, it was the same exact thing. It was mostly just people being like, "Oh, well, Climate Trade is doing a DAO, or this
Mm-hmm.
person's doing a DAO," but nobody had a concrete answer of like, what is the infrastructure, and
Right.
it's because there really isn't any. So I mean, that would be
Hmm.
terrific. I don't know if it's like on-chain voting you're working on or what particular, but I know you said you didn't want to dive too deep into it. But
What's
when could we be expecting those dApps?
Right. So without giving too much away, it is a blockchain purist solution, which means it's going to be completely like smart contract integrated solution. But the other cool part is it's going to be embeddable like our AlgoPay and AlgoSwap applications, right? And because that's key, because like I said, this is something that DAOs will be able to use. So it needs to have a UI interface that the end users or the DAO participants would be able to interact with in a really organic way. So it's going to have a front end kind of like those other ones that you can just embed in a website, but it'll be one of those key DAO pieces. That will be ready. It shouldn't be any more than 2 weeks. We were finishing. We had a really big break earlier today, actually. Like right before I came on for the last like 5 hours, we were working on the smart contract stuff for this, and we just cracked it all. So like basically the last key piece we had to do, we finished about half an hour ago, which was really exciting. It's kind of funny. Like I have to switch gears a lot with everything I'm working on. I call it mental gymnastics, like going directly from building to something like this and the social or one of these other things. But the other one will actually be out first. So the dev tool that we have could be out in as early as a week or so. That one's being currently reviewed by the Algorand Foundation right now.
Awesome, awesome. So the embeddable projects that you're working on, the AlgoPay, AlgoSwap, and what you just mentioned, how easy are those to incorporate into a website for somebody that's not too technical and is maybe just using something like Squarespace to launch a website?
Right. So yeah, you can do it in about a minute or so with no coding experience. Basically, you just put in your own information into basically a form, right? And then you press submit, and it actually generates a snippet of code, and it actually lets you visualize it too. And then you can just embed that directly in any website, including Squarespace, with no coding experience required. The only thing with Squarespace is you have to have the subscription model that includes custom JavaScript or custom HTML, which is like a tier above it's like the mid-tier one for Squarespace. But yeah, so it's super, super easy. And you can do it on any website, Wix, Weebly, WordPress, of course, anything.
Cool. Well, that's good to know because I'm in the process of building a website right now. I don't necessarily have a need to have AlgoPay or AlgoSwap on the site, but it would be just really interesting to be able to incorporate it and maybe find a use for it later down the lines. But I noticed that you also were trying to invest in server hardware and hosted Algorand node APIs. Could you touch a little bit more on that, on why we need it? I mean, I know a lot of
Mm-hmm.
apps rely on the Algo Explorer, and it's been struggling to hold the load
Yeah.
for that essentially. Plus, it's kind of centralized for every app to be relying on one central service. So could you touch on a little bit about what your plans are?
Yeah, definitely. So it was something we've been talking about for a while that we've been wanting to do. Partially because it's just really exciting as a developer to have like the big boy toys essentially. And as soon as you have your own servers, you can do things that are just simply not possible without them. On a really simplistic sense. But then also, yeah, I see there's really a key need in the Algorand space right now for at the very least a backup solution for Algo Explorer, because that's kind of the way we don't want it to be a primary use if people are already used to using Algo Explorer as their main index or API. But we want to be able to create a good backup solution and be able to make it free for developers to be able to use. And then, of course, we would be able to do like custom enterprise solutions if you want us to, assist with your dApp building or anything like that. And then you would basically be able to have your own, custom API solution as well that we'd be able to do for you. But it's going to make all of our stuff super fast too, because we would be able to use it as our primary, and then use Algo Explorer as our backup. It's kind of like our use case, and then we would be able to let everybody else use it as well as a backup for them.
That's awesome because it's certainly just a one point of failure with everyone just using the
Right.
Algo Explorer. So
Yeah.
it's good. I know Chris Swiner from Reach. I know
Mm-hmm.
he's working on something similar. So it'll be good when the ecosystem has options to choose from. I know there are
The more the
enterprise
better.
for
Absolutely.
sure. I know there are enterprise level options, so, people can pay for, but a lot of a lot of people that are trying to still find free services are going to rely on the
Mhm.
Algo Explorer. I mean, if it's free, most people are going to use it, and
Yeah.
you can't have everybody in the world using the same exact server, because I don't think it would work. But that's
Mhm.
great. Could we could we
Yeah.
move a little bit on to a couple of these projects? You have Algo Cloud, AlgoPay, AlgoSwap, AlgoGlyph. Like, I guess one, I would like a quick explanation on what these are, but also how is the team able to whip out so many different projects in what seems like lightning speed?
Right. So the speed question is really goes to our technological advantage over a lot of other like development organizations because of how much infrastructure we built ourselves. So a lot of our stuff we use our own SDK for it. So a lot of it's going to be customized to work specifically for all of our use cases. So which means we can iterate stuff really, really quickly. Um, and we've also been trying lately to not get bogged down in complicated development systems. So all of our like recent consumer applications are all just vanilla JavaScript. They're super simple to write. They're really extensible, and yeah, it allows us to iterate really quickly. And then a lot of them are super scalable too, which is something that's important. And like, so it's not like we're just building all this stuff out of thin air either, right? Because we have an existing relationship with the Algorand Foundation, and this collaboration we do with them specifically to build tools for developers and stuff. So we are already in the mindset of quickly iterating tools, right? And so we also build retailer consumer applications and tools as well while we're building all this stuff specifically for the Algorand Foundation. And it just allows us to build a lot of stuff really quickly because that's kind of like where our focus is within the ecosystem.
That makes complete sense. So I guess let's just dive a little bit deeper into each one of these little projects I just spoke of. What is Algo Cloud, and what problem is it solving?
Right. So ALGOSWAP is definitely our most ambitious project and probably one of the most ambitious within the blockchain space. So we have a philosophy that with Web3, we're not going to throw out all the things from Web2 that actually work. So Algo Cloud is going to have file storage with AWS. It has login security with Google Authenticator. It has standard email. It's going to do a lot of like really standard business things. Like you'll be able to do invoicing. You'll be able to pay bills. It'll basically be able to track the way you operate a business that's based on the blockchain with a bunch of like integrated Algorand functionality into a business workspace essentially. And the cool part is it's really extensible. So like if you have a business account on it, you can actually invite all of your users to have their own custom dashboard within your workspace, right? So if you have a good example would be like a small hedge fund that has exposure to different DeFi products on Algorand. One of our seed investors, he said, specifically that he has a small DeFi fund that people are invested in, and he's mentioned multiple times that he wished there was a way that he could, give them an overview of how their investments are doing spread out across these different Algorand DeFi projects. So with Algo Cloud, you would basically be able to white label it, and then you'd be able to invite all of your investor clients to their own custom analytics dashboard with that shows all of their exposure to different DeFi projects and everything. Another use case would be for like an NFT creator that has a collection, right? You could have your collection and your shop on Algo Cloud. You could also invite all of your customers to have their own dashboard to view their NFTs, to get access to private or interesting behind the stuff, and it would allow you to like do the customer interaction part of your business, but also allow you to do your billing, keep track of your receipts, do your invoicing. Solving a lot of these really like practical business needs that have kind of gotten glossed over a little bit with all the excitement around, the pure DeFi solutions.
That makes complete sense, and honestly, that does sound pretty ambitious for sure. I would not disagree with you, and when you said that's probably your most ambitious project. So, one of the newer ones, aside from Algo Cloud, is AlgoGlyph, and from what I understand, that's essentially um, in its most basic form, just the ability to sign a transaction, like actual put your signature on the blockchain. Is that correct?
That's a really like boiled down way of thinking about it. But it's actually one of our like dApps that has some of the most compelling use cases of the stuff that we've built. For example, let's say that you have to do a big transaction. your bank's going to want to see an actual signature on that. As soon as we like released it, we had people that were messaging us and they're like, this could potentially literally be a godsend because I'll like try to do something and my bank will contact me and be like, why is your signature not on this transaction? Because ones and zeros aren't going to hold up in a court of law, for example, right? If you're signing a contract, or if you're doing certain types of bills or transactions, they need to see an actual signature. So having the ability to put an actual signature within the note field of a transaction is a pretty groundbreaking solution in and of itself. And to the best of my understanding, this isn't something that exists on other chains yet either. We might have created the first actual solution for this. We've looked and we haven't found an example of it on Ethereum or anything. It might know that for sure. But yeah, so there's a bunch of like interesting, compelling use cases. Another one would be for NFT creators or collections. So being able to sign your NFTs is a really cool value add for a collection or for your customers. And then if you had an NFT collection with multiple artists that contributed to it, those artists could sign the individual NFTs that they created. Another really compelling use case is for digital identity. So like, for example, if you have a signature, it doesn't have to be your actual like real life identity, but if you have a consistent digital identity, a signature could be a great way to represent that, especially as some of these like metaverse solutions start to come online. There's a bunch of really interesting, like compelling like use cases for it. Kind of the way it all started is we've been talking for a long time about finding a way to do like efficient data storage on chain. That's been like one of those holy grail things we've been talking about for months. Like there's got to be some way to compress data into 1 kilobyte or less so that it can actually exist permanently on chain. So we were trying to do a lot of different stuff with JPEGs and actually be able to compress NFTs to be able to let them exist on chain. But basically what you'd have to do is you have to like really, really compress it and then use AI to enhance them. But it was just like kind of like a hacky solution that wasn't like a pure blockchain solution that we wanted. I was like, what if we did signatures, right? Because we still have to basically encode them so that they can be encoded into what the note field will accept. And then we have to decode them as well, which is what we were able to demonstrate that we were able to do with ALGOGLYPH.
Now, what's the biggest hurdle with on-chain storage? So why is it so difficult to store NFTs or like the images of them, or even larger files? It could be anything, but why is it so difficult to do so?
Well, we're only allowed to do a kilobyte. That's the maximum size you're allowed to do with transactions on Algorand currently. Now, other chains like Ethereum, for example, to the best of my understanding, there is no data limit anymore. It would just be obscenely expensive to try to do it because blockchains aren't really meant for data storage. That's an important part to think about, right? So because blockchains have kind of a specific use case, data storage isn't that specific use case. So finding a way to get data storage to play well with something that it wasn't built for is kind of like the holy grail. Like how do you get data to exist on chain without like being a burden on the network essentially, right? Because if you have everybody on chain, it would make it it would make transactions slower. It could potentially clog the network. So the idea is to find a way to store data as small and as efficiently as possible so that it can still exist on chain. And with what we created with ALGOGLYPH, that's now actually possible. And when you're doing a signature on it, every single stroke, it'll actually tell you in real time how many bytes it's using out of your 1 kilobyte. So like it'll start with like 0.005 bytes, and then as you do a more and more complex signature, you'll actually be able to see how many bytes you're adding to your total 1 kilobyte size.
That's really interesting. Do you know of any solutions that are in the works to for anything more than just signatures? Because I'd imagine signatures, although important, aren't that data heavy in compared to a video file or an image file.
So one other idea that we've considered would be basically writing a smart contract that can bundle different group transactions with multiple transactions within it that would each have a different piece of a file, so that then it could get recompiled. It would get like decompiled, spread out over multiple transactions and multiple groups, and then recompiled on the other side. But it's still not a pure solution. And until until we can do like larger data storage on chain, I don't think there's anything else quite like
Makes sense. That's certainly why you call it the Holy Grail, and I'm sure you're not
it.
alone with that. Now, Headline recently just announced an ASA staking project. So, how would that work? Is that going to be like right on your website? I know the website for Headline is absolutely massive. There's so many different tabs to go through and read about. But how would the ASA staking platform work, and what are your intentions with it?
So, are you talking more about the Steakhouse concept that we have been discussing a little bit?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's still something that's still being considered exactly how to do it effectively. But it's the idea that like there needs to be an effective, secure way for people when they're first starting projects to be able to do a staking solution, right? And there currently isn't any. So what you'll see is either unaudited smart contracts that are used for staking, or you'll see like bot style staking, which is I think a couple examples. There's a few larger projects that have done bot style staking where you get daily rewards that are delivered by a bot. But that's in the blockchain space, that's not the solution that you should be looking for. It's really audited smart contracts that can allow for effective disbursement for the staking. So the idea is that we build a open source portal where anybody can create an ASA and set up a staking solution directly with it. And now it's just a question of time and finding the right partners to work with on it, because of all the projects we're doing, we'd really like to do that through like a bounty or something, or find a project that is looking for a cool application or something to build, and then we can help fund them or something like that, versus us doing it ourselves because of all the different things we're already doing. But there's definitely a need within the Algorand space for something like that. It'll reduce the chances of things like rug pulls happening, because it'll be kind of locked in a really secure, audited fashion. It'll create more trust with young projects, especially ones that deserve it, but are just having a hard time, getting traction with what they're doing. There's a lot of different compelling reasons it needs to exist, and it doesn't exist yet. So it's really something that we want to see get done in the next few months.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't know if it's the same thing, but I know a great solution would be locked liquidity pools, because it's
Mm-hmm.
it can be super risky with a new project. You're buying it up, you're super excited about it, but just that
Mm-hmm.
one owner or two owners of the liquidity pool just pull their liquidity after a couple of days of it pumping, then you're stuck holding the bag.
Right.
So it would be a great solution if somebody could at least come out with some sort of locked liquidity pools. I believe Yieldly is working on it, but obviously it would be great for the ecosystem if more people were coming out with.
Yeah. So there was something called Tiny Lock, which was as part of the Tiny Man everything that has been happening on Tiny Man. There were actually like some questions about once you're in one of those liquidity contracts, what happens in a situation like this where everything needs to migrate, right? So I think they've been looking for some really innovative solutions for migrating those kinds of either decompiling them or migrating those Tiny Lock contracts to the new Tiny Man once it gets up and running.
Yeah, that's a great point, because you saw it happening even with like the small DAOs that are building right now. They have multi-sig
Mm-hmm.
wallets that are in staking pools, and they all have to get everyone together to agree to move those funds out of those pools. So I mean, yeah, if you did have locked liquidity pools, that could be an issue. So hopefully there's a solution there, because I'd imagine that there has to be some sort of fail safe where it's like if things are
Yeah.
compromised, then your funds should be able to be removed even if the contract hasn't like fulfilled the time it was supposed to. Uh,
Yeah.
but that'll be really interesting to see what does unfold over the next couple months.
And that's really where things like multi-sigs can really shine as a fail-safe, right? So if you have a multi-sig where you have several different custodians that have a responsibility with it, you could use that as a fail-safe measure. There are certain things like this.
Of course. So, moving a little bit along, could we speak about the Algo Astros? It's the headline NFTs. Uh, what are they for? Is it funding more development over there, or is it like what are the goals of the Algo Astros sales?
Yeah, so it was originally created as a fun way to start interacting with the NFT space on Algorand because we didn't have a project. We want to be able to touch every different part of the Algorand ecosystem, and we didn't have anything in the NFT space yet. So had been brainstorming with what's a cool way to create an NFT collection that can allow us to start interacting in the NFT space, and that's how we came up with the idea for the Algo Astros, basically 400 individual astronauts that are do like branding, a lot of our cool branding, but then do collabs with a lot of different other projects and create a fun, interactive way for the community to kind of like get involved in everything with what we're doing. We had no idea it was going to be this like successful. We just had a secondary sale of like 3,500 algos yesterday for one of them. The floor right now for secondary is 5,000 algos, and we've only done 52 of the 400 Astros so far, and it has like a 50 algo a week increase in value in like price for our base. So like the next ones that we do at the raffle are gonna start at like I think 300 algo, and then next week is 350, then 400, and it basically like by having that kind of a system, the people that are able to get it instantly like increases in value for them as well. But nobody wants to sell them. That's the funny part. The people that like buy them, they don't really want to sell them at all. People really, really like them. We also announced recently that we're going to be doing a staking program for them, which was kind of a surprise for people because we hadn't really planned to, but I thought it'd be a really cool way to give back to the people that were supporting it from the very beginning. So for the first 42 Astros that I created personally, if you're one of the holders of them by like mid-March, you'll get a 1,000 HDL staking reward essentially, which is pretty cool. And we want to be able to have rewards like that for the entire series. And it's important that any reward announcements we're not going to make until we finish like a block of the Astros. So for the first 1 to 42, we didn't announce that we were going to do a reward until after we'd finished selling them because we don't want any kind of rewards to unduly impact the price of them, right? Because we're not trying to sell a reward or anything. We're just trying to sell this really cool NFT project that people can interact with. But we're going to announce the next reward part at Astro 150, I believe, and we're at 50 right now. So then it'll be like at a block at a time that each of the staking rewards will be announced too.
Awesome. So that kind of brings me to one of my last questions, which is, what is the HDL token? What is its use case, and what are the headline intentions to incorporate that token into everything it's doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's actually really relevant to what I've been working on today. So right now it's very much like a hardcore utility token. If you have 250 HDL tokens, you can log into Forum, you can sign up for Forum, and you can access our social media platform. We have almost 900 users now for it, which is pretty cool. We'd never managed or built a social media platform before, so the fact that it's doing this well is pretty epic. And this is the cool part about how we build all these different things that can interact with each other in a really organic way. If you go log into Forum, it's going to make you sign into your Algorand wallet first, and it's going to check the balance of HDL on your wallet, because it's basically a proof of stake network, in that we believe that traditional social media, it's a really bad system that they've built, because it's a advertising revenue model where basically if you're not paying for something, then you're probably the product, right? And the fact that all of our user data gets sold to advertising agencies who then create these manipulative ads, that are tailored towards us, which create really unhealthy social interaction. And we think by removing that entire ad revenue model aspect of social media, we can create a lot more healthy, organic interaction between users. So the HDL token right now is a very hardcore utility function to allow people access to this platform where they can basically do this really organic interaction that we're seeing with it. We have really big plans for it though. And so as we finish building out this suite of products that we're doing, we eventually want to be able to transition it from a pure utility token to an actual currency, in that people will be able to pay for all of our goods and services in our native HDL token with a 5 to 10% discount. And for stuff like Algo Cloud, where that's really geared more towards enterprise use cases. Like I said, if you're a small fund and you have 20 to 40 investors and they're doing custom analytics, for example. So a service like that that's white label could cost between $20,000 and $40,000 a month. And basically, by paying for that service in HDL, you would actually get like a 5 to 10% discount, which is a considerable discount, especially at prices like that. And so to be able to offer that across our entire range of goods and services is going to be a really, really big value add and incentive to use our native currency. It could be, I think the timeline is like 12 to 18 months to get to that point where we're basically able to do that full transition. So right now it exists as a pure utility token, and that's really an important way of thinking about it.
Awesome. Awesome. Sorry. Now, is there a plan to, I know of at one point it was 1,000 HDL tokens, am I correct, to get onto the forum website?
It was,
And
yeah.
then it was reduced to 250. Is there a plan to continue to reduce that? Because it does cap the growth that could be had on the network. As of right now, if everyone had just 250, you could only have 100,000 users on the site.
Right.
Which obviously doesn't seem to be an issue currently because you haven't got to that point yet. But there certainly could be a day where everyone wants to use some sort of unbiased social media site that's not selling their data. So is there a plan to continue to lower that barrier entry, or even eventually remove it altogether and just incorporate the other use cases of the token that you were speaking of? Because even if but even if you just brought it down to one HDL token in the future, that still limits your growth to 25 million.
Right. So going back to what you first said about user data, we actually don't store like any user data, which is a really special thing about Forum. So like even when you log in with your, it checks the balance of your Algorand address to make sure you have enough tokens. We don't have a record of that. So the only record is between you and your Algorand wallet, right? So we don't store even your Algorand addresses that are used when you sign in. If you use a email address and a pseudonym, that's all the user data that we have. And then whenever a user deletes their account, we actually have a system that it goes through to delete all of their user data on the entire platform. So there's absolutely no record of it, because we like maybe have like 2% of the user data that you would get on like a Facebook or something else, like, because that's a core building block of it, right? Is that we respect user privacy. And they are entitled to their own data. That's like a really like core piece of Forum. Now getting back to what you were saying about like the price to get in, the idea is that we want it to be eventually tied to like, I think it was like $40 to $60 USDC, because we want to make sure that users have some sort of like stake in the platform. So it is a proof of stake platform, and that we want to incentivize like positive interaction, because the users want to see the platform succeed, right? So if it was completely free, for example, you would get a lot more like trolls, or you get a lot more like bad actors who would, have such a low barrier to entry that it would be fun to, get in there and try to start like screwing stuff up. So by having like a small barrier to entry, so that everybody has to have a little bit of skin in the game, it'll like raise the barrier to, keeping bad actors out. We want to be able to eventually tie it to like 40 to 60 USDC, and then to have it actually, interact with to actually be directly tied to that, so that it'll be able to change like the value in real time, depending on the value of the HDL token. Because like, God forbid it get like, people speculate that the price of the HDL token could get really, really high, right? Kind of like Bitcoin or something like that. And we wouldn't, obviously, it would get down to like a 0.0. That's the good part about having 6 decimals for the HDL token, is that if it did get really expensive, then the price would be able to keep dropping, so that it would be tied to that 40 to 60 USDC entry. If that makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense, and I'm glad you mentioned the wanting to tie it to about $40 to $60, because my next question was going to be like, how do you decide where it gets lowered to, and like when do you decide? I didn't know if it was going to be maybe like a sort of governance structure, where the users can decide. But I also like that idea, because I do believe that a little bit of skin in the game. I mean, these are proof of stake concepts, so a little bit of stake in the game could weed out any bad actors, like you said.
That's an interesting question, because I was speculating at first what the cost per user was going to be for this platform, right? Because we have all of our like hosting that we pay for and everything to be able to run there's like, maybe 10 different like workers and, and hosting things and databases that are all interacting together in order for Forum to function. And then I just got the most recent bill like 2 days ago from our hosting provider for it. And it's like, for our like 850 or so users right now, it's about $400 a month for all of our hosting stuff, which is really interesting because it only comes down to like 50 to 75 cents a user. So like we'll be able to scale down the price dramatically, especially as we get more and more users. It'll actually get cheaper per user. So it'll be allow us to be able to do that. And when we were first building it, I had no like concept of how expensive it was going to be per user. I was speculating it could be $15 to $20 per user. I had no idea it would be this affordable per user, even though they're able to do everything you would be able to do on Facebook essentially. Like you can upload pictures and videos and send tons and tons of comments and do all of these things and micro blogging essentially as well. You can do listings. We're going to add an NFT marketplace, and it's actually like pretty affordable. So we'll be able to keep dropping the price with it.
Yeah, I haven't yet to log on to Forum. Obviously, I've been to the page about 2 different times. That's how I knew over time you dropped it from 1,000 to 250. But yeah, that's a really cool idea that you might add a NFT marketplace to the social media page. Kind of have just a one-stop shop. Everyone loves to be scrolling on their social medias, and everyone seems to love NFTs. So why not merge the two? That sounds terrific. But listen, we only have about 25 minutes left before I have to end the stream. So let's move on to one pressing topic that I'm sure the community wants to talk about, and then we can move on to questions that will be in the chat. Anyone listening, I see a couple questions. If you have any more, just drop them and I will get to them. So could we just talk about the Tiny Man fiasco? It seemed, I know I'm sure everyone's already heard about what happened with Tiny Man, but at the moment, Tiny Man was nowhere to be found, and it seemed like Headline was one of the few in the community that was giving real-time updates with what was going on, and everyone in the community seemed to appreciate it up until one certain point. And I just want to hear your side of the story and see.
Absolutely. And let me just start by saying that like there was that 48-hour period was one of like the most emotional periods of my life, and it was so like emotionally taxing towards the end of it. Like I like literally almost fell over. It was one of the most like, intense things I've experienced. So let's take a step back and figure out how this all started. So the day that the exploit was discovered, we were launching our liquidity provider staking program, right? So we had just made an announcement that there was going to be a 24-hour period where if you sign up for our Tiny Man staking program, you were going to be getting a reward. So the 24-hour period had started, and we were getting hundreds of people that were emailing and signing up, and that were sending us DMs and tagging us and all this stuff because they wanted to participate in it. So because of that was happening, I was like super, super engaged on social media. And then when word started getting out about the exploit, I started following it really closely because the staking program had essentially already started, and all these people were adding liquidity, and I had a responsibility to make sure that what was happening was secure. So I stayed really like up to date on what was happening. And because of how isolated it was at first, it was something that was pretty easy to track. But then as it for our time here in Texas, between like midnight and 4 a.m. I was one of the most like active people from a big project on social media that was keeping an eye on everything because I still had everything that was happening with our staking program. And so because I was active, I started to get tagged in basically every single comment or post about what was happening with the exploit because people wanted information and they knew that we were active. So without asking for, definitely did not ask for any sort of like thing with it. I ended up in this sort of responsibility to communicate kind of what was happening to the larger Algorand community instead of to just the people that were part of our staking program, which was my original intention, was to make sure that there was clarity for that. And then if we were going to postpone it, it would be really easy to communicate that, right? So as more and more people are DMing and emailing and tagging us and stuff, it started to get really overwhelming because, there was a real lack of clarity or understanding about the extent of what was happening, what responsibility people had with like their liquidity or anything. And then it started to happen again, right? So then there was another like round of exploits that started happening around, I think it was like 1 a.m. or something like that. And then it got to the point where I was like, all right, the only way that we're going to, really get clarity on all of this is like, we got to get a good report written up so that people can make good informed decisions with their investments, right? So that, that was where my head was at, primarily thinking about all these people that are involved in our staking program, but then feeling like the results were a responsibility of the larger community because I was active at that point. So I did a 500 algo bounty to see if we could get a good in-depth investigation and write-up of this thing done as quickly and efficiently as possible so people can make a good informed decision with their investments, right? Because that's where my head is always at, just like total transparency, just let people know what's going on and then they can make informed decisions. So basically, I slept for 3 hours that night between like 4:30 and 7:30 a.m. As soon as I woke up, I got a DM from the main developer that was working on this report, and he messaged me. He's like, "This is much more serious than we thought. This isn't just a decimal thing. This affects all ASAs, and it could be actively exploited right now." And at this point, the urgency hadn't really set in with the Algorand community, and the amount of liquidity that was still in Tiny Man was significant. And this was before I'd even seen the final report. He let me know this. I was like, let's get this thing written up as quickly as possible. We got to know how serious this is, and we got to get this out there, right? Because if there's an active exploit and nobody understands how serious it is, then they can slowly all be essentially exploited, right? And then a couple hours later, we eventually got it. And, there was never a thought about whether parts of it should be redacted. It was the idea that there's a sense of urgency to get this out as quickly as possible so people can make the most informed decisions with their investments, right? It was that simple. And, once we released it, like people have described it as basically sending a shockwave through the Algorand ecosystem. And within no amount of time, liquidity was getting pulled out so fast because people read it and they were like, holy crap, this is much, much, much more serious than we thought. I cannot tell you how many people have messaged privately and were like, I didn't have any intention to pull liquidity until I read the report. And a lot of these were people that are developers and appreciate the detail we went into. And they specifically referenced the testnet example of the exploit as being like an instrumental reason that they ended up pulling their liquidity. They're like, it wasn't until that I actually read how it happened and how it was actually done that it's really dawned on me how serious it was and how important it was to pull the liquidity at that point. Right. And then, so in the immediate aftermath of posting it, that was the response I was getting. But then about 30, 45 minutes after it had been posted, there was like a whole nother wave that just basically hit me. And it was basically the idea that because HDL wasn't one of the pools that was high on the list of exploitable pools, one comment I remember specific said, it's really something to yell at your neighbors that their house is burning when yours isn't. And in the moment, it was hard for me to appreciate where somebody was coming from saying that, because my philosophy was, if people are in exploitable pools, you have to be able to tell everybody as quickly as possible that those pools are exploitable, right? So, it was an impossible situation that I found myself in at that point. So I'm like, what do you do? I've never been trained to handle an exploit like this before. We didn't have a contact with Tiny Man until after we posted it. They ended up adding me to their private response channel about 20 minutes after I posted it. And we've been working with them since then, sharing information and a lot of different stuff. But prior to that, that's where my head was at, just to, get that across to people. And in the immediate aftermath, that was what was happening. And I can't tell you how many people have said that it was instrumental in their decision to end up pulling the liquidity. So thinking back on it, there's two things that I really want to touch on. I think it was a learning experience for everybody. And one of them is that it's really, really important going forward that we have essentially either a rapid response team or some kind of third-party watchdog, which can not only find these bugs before they get to this point, but that can also intake data or intake information from people like us, heads of projects, as things are happening, as basically a point person that would be active during these periods of time, especially late at night, right, while other projects or things might not be as active, so that we would basically be able to pass this information along to them in a way that then, you could even have a DAO structure set up for it so that then good informed decisions could be determined about the best and most efficient way to distill that information to the public, right? So, that's what I would really like to see. And Tiny Man's most recent post yesterday, that they've like basically come up with a full comprehensive plan with bug bounties and, rapid response elements and everything like that, so that in the future, there will be a really, really good structure in place for how information is distilled and how quickly you can respond to something like this once it happens. And I did a 2-hour podcast with Cooper Daniels last night, and the question he asked me is like, if you could do it over again, would you have done it differently, right? Like the way that it was released and everything. And honestly, right now, it's still hard for me to say that I would have. I don't know, because so many people have said that what I did was instrumental in them pulling their liquidity, and that we were able to shut it down as quickly as we were because of how quickly the impact was had on the sense of urgency, right? So that's one thing I really wanted to emphasize, like closing this part of the conversation. And then the other thing is that I am not like a jerk or an asshole about this whole situation, and we're gonna be active in making sure that everybody's whole again after this, right? Like if anybody got hurt by this, we're gonna try to make sure that everybody gets completely made whole again by the time this is all over too. Headline, because of the responsibility and the role that we had in it, distilling information and everything like that. And we're going to make sure until this is all over that all of this gets rectified. That's why we're still actively having a role in, making sure that the liquidity has been drawn down in Tiny Man, and then the information that's made available to people about when it'll all come back together. It was an incredibly emotionally draining period. And, with social media, for example, there's no nuance. There's no way to contextualize all the events that surrounded that happening. Some people were like, oh, it was just like an intention thing. I was like, no, I've unfortunately found myself in this situation because with the same day we were setting up a staking program, we have hundreds of people emailing and messaging, this all happened. So we were already as active as you could possibly be. And then we accidentally unfortunately found ourselves in this role where people were relying on us to provide information as quickly as possible. So, I mean, it's unfortunate, and hopefully in the future, there'll be a really efficient way to distill information and get it, it'll be brought to a close much sooner, hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so too. I appreciate everything you just said. Yeah, that night was kind of chaotic. I remember being on an impromptu Twitter space at about 1 a.m, and people were just looking for some sort of information. So, I mean, in the long run, I do agree that it helped more than it hurt. I mean, there is that argument that it did put the code out there, so maybe others could exploit it quicker that weren't already doing so. But it also is also completely true. And as we see right here, we have Kevin commenting that pulled liquidity due to the report. Thank you. So, I mean, it is it's a double-edged sword, of course, but
right.
I do lean on the side of more transparency. I think if you give the people the information, they will do the right thing.
Yeah. So just about that. So that is an argument, right, that some people have had, but the serious developers that I've spoken to since we've released it basically have all said that when we read the report, we agreed that it was well written and it should absolutely be released. There was not even a thought to should it be released in its full form, which was exactly where my head was at. It was the idea that serious developers already knew how to do this, right? It was largely disseminated through Telegram and Discord and Twitter Spaces, the exact method and code that you could use to replicate this, right? So all the serious developers that could do it already knew exactly how to do it. So, I knew that when we were getting ready to publish this report, that's, conceptually, I already understood that. So there was never even a thought to, should you pull certain information and then basically try to be the gatekeeper of information, right? And then it gets to the larger philosophical element of what DeFi really is. Is it centralized in that certain people should hold information that's not available to others? Or is it incumbent on third parties to basically do their own investigations and to be able to disseminate that information as broadly as possible which is really where my head was at the moment as well, is like, get a good investigative examination of this done, get it out to everybody as my role within the DeFi element. And yeah, so that is an argument, but from the developers I've spoken to, it was widely available already. Anybody that could have done it would have known how to do it. And if you didn't know how to code, good luck. You have never been able to implement that anyway. It was way too complicated for the average non-coder to be able to use anyway.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you. I mean, from where I stood, the information was out there. So, I mean, I do think there were a couple people that maybe had negative things to say that didn't quite fully understand that you weren't the only source of that information. So, but let's just move quickly on to these chat questions because we do only have about 9 minutes here. And let's see, we have Paul White asking, when will HDL token be listed on an exchange like Coinbase, etc., maybe even Binance, or just any other coin? Are there any plans to do so?
So there's actually a lot of plans, like in the immediacy of what we're going to do with the token, not including our staking program, which might actually get more comprehensive, which we'll find out about pretty soon, which could be exciting. I actually had a meeting earlier with Copper, and it looks like we're going to be doing custody with Copper, which is going to be really interesting. We would potentially be the third token that has custody with Copper, as well as Yieldly and Opulus. And so we basically be doing custody with them while we set up basically we're looking to set up a foundation or an infrastructure to be able to do the broader decentralization of the token, which would include listings on major exchanges like FTX, Binance, where we'd really be targeting large ones initially, more than some of the smaller ones once we get to that point.
Of course, that's great. I mean, obviously, the larger the exchange, the better. So then we have Kevin again, and he asks, any plans to apply the lessons learned from the Tiny Man experience to Algo Cloud? I know you did touch on that a little bit, but let's just hear a full explanation.
Right. So an important thing to realize about Algo Cloud is it's not decentralized at all, right? So it doesn't run on smart contracts. It is a Web 2.0 SaaS dashboard, essentially like what you would get if you're using Google Drive or a different SaaS platform, but it has a lot of integrated Web 3.0 elements. So like, let's say you have a white label version of Algo Cloud, that would be stored on your own database, on your own servers. But before we ever sell anything to do with it, we are going to get it rigorously examined and audited, right? And even though it's not necessarily smart contracts that are going to be getting audited, we would be doing a rigorous security evaluation, especially because we would be charging a significant amount of money. So the amount of it's a very secure platform already, with like a really intelligent kind of like role-based system. But we're going to get it rigorously tested and publish the findings and everything before we ever sell any kind of subscription for it.
Awesome. All right. So we do have another question. Let's see. Right here. It's not for you, but I do want to just answer this for the audience member real quick. Travis asks, can someone explain to me how you know if you have liquidity in? Like if I have my coin stored in my wallet, am I okay? Yeah, you're absolutely okay. You would know if you were supplying liquidity to a platform. To supply liquidity to Tiny Man per se, you're basically pairing one token with another token and in exchange getting LP tokens. So if you don't have any LP tokens, you have nothing to worry about. And let's see. Average J asks, so if I understand, to use the HDL services, ALGOSWAP, ALGOPAY, ALGOGLYPH form, etc., you would need HDL in the wallet. And as I understand, I'll let you answer, but as I understand, it is just Forum currently in which you need the tokens for, and it's 250 of them to access.
Yeah, so we have, like I said, we have several different product lines. Our Algo product line, as of right now, is going to be basically a bunch of free solutions that we just provide to encourage development in the Algorand ecosystem. So AlgoSwap, AlgoPay, AlgoGlyph, these are all free solutions. And both AlgoPay and AlgoSwap are both embeddable, and then you can kind of customize them yourself. We can build like advanced versions of them, but we make those freely available for people. The cool part though is like going forward, once Algo Cloud goes online, we're going to integrate all of that stuff really seamlessly into one platform. So you'll be able to do your swapping, you'll be able to do your billing, your purchases. We are also just about done with a full analytics platform. It's completely customizable, so you can track just the tokens you want to see, and you can see like, all of their most popular pools and everything, and you can get data over time. And it's a fully like customizable dashboard specifically for that too.
Awesome. So I see about 4 or 5 questions left, and we have about 4 minutes left. So I might only get to 1 or 2 of these. If I don't get to yours, I apologize. And we have Brian is asking, any thoughts on bringing HDL to the EVM ecosystem to be compatible with networks like Ethereum, BSC, Polygon, and so forth?
Yeah, so I mean, I would like to see a mechanism to do it. Absolutely, I would be interested to do it today if there was a way to do it effectively. I'd have to look into it, and if you have a good example of a bridge that's functional right now to do something like that, I'd be very interested in looking at it.
Yeah, of course. Obviously, and the only bridges I know of so far are the Algo Mint bridge, and then Glitter Finance is working on bridges from like Solana to Algorand and whatnot. But
Right.
not really sure those would even solve the problem
Do they
that
go
he's at.
that way though? Right, because they're bringing assets in. Do we have any bridges right now that are going to be able to take assets out, essentially
Uh,
to basically be able to create a wrapped HDL token on
I,
Ethereum or something like that?
I believe the Glitter Finance bridge, if I understand correctly, I did speak with the CEO once and actually had a corrupted file and didn't post the interview. But regardless, I
Oh, that's
believe
unfortunate.
it is. I believe the Glitter Finance bridges will be 2 ways, but that would be something to find out. I actually will be speaking to him again sometime soon, so maybe I'll ask. Moving on real quick, we have I can't even Rue Orcs. Sure. Do you guys plan on doing a staking pool on Yieldly?
Yeah, I can't really comment on that right now.
All right, I'm going to take that as a yes, guys. Just throwing it out there. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so I think we have time for one more. Why
Yeah.
did let's see it. Why did you choose the 25 million max supply?
It's kind of funny. I was like, I thought that something close to Bitcoin seemed like a reasonable number of tokens. When because that was around the time that all these different projects started to do like their billion, 5 billion, 10 billion tokens. Like those are
Yep.
hard numbers to like wrap your head around. If you're interested in trading tokens and stuff, it's like those are kind of like hard numbers to calculate things with. So I was like, let's do a small number so that people can it's easier to like quantify how much you have, which is how we ended up with 25 million. The cool part is that our original airdrop of 3,000 tokens per person back in April represented one of the largest like proportional amounts of a major token that was done in one airdrop initially, right? Because it's something like 30% of the total supply to 3,000 people, which is really cool because most of those people have never like sold or traded their tokens because they had a real incentive because of it was a significant like piece, right? Compared to what you would normally get in an airdrop.
Yep. Yeah, no, I mean, I appreciate all those answers you gave, and it's funny that you mentioned the airdrop because I was not totally in tune with Headline at the time, but somebody in the community, and it was pretty much right when I just got started making YouTube videos and entered the community, and someone in the community did send me a couple of the
Nice.
HDL tokens from the airdrop, so that was very kind of them. I wish I could remember
Awesome.
the Twitter avatar that did it. I don't think it was a real name, but I think
Yeah.
that just about does it for our
Oh,
time.
I can
Sorry.
answer this one. Sorry, right here, real quick.
Uh,
So the
okay.
Travis, Travis likes to don't rug pull us, Aaron. That's the whole point of copper, right? So right now we don't have our supply put in a smart contract to like hold it, but like with copper because it's custody, that's going to get locked up pretty quick there. So then there'll be a multi-sig on that too.
Perfect. Awesome. We love to hear it. And sorry to anybody I didn't get to today, but I do think this is about to cut us off in about 30 seconds. I only have an hour with this streaming platform. I might upgrade it as if these get popular, but that being said, I really appreciate you coming on the show, Aaron.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Of course. We'll do it again sometime.
I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Take care.
Take care.
And that's that, everybody. If you liked the content, just like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.